And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I am here with the Executive Director of Adaptive Sports Northwest. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Jen, what an amazing thing that you're an Executive Director for. Like, when I first sort of discovered your organization and what you do for folks and give some people outlets that they would normally not have, I was like, I have to talk to you about this. How did Adaptive Sports Northwest get started?
Really, it started back in the early 80s
Yeah.
with just folks with disabilities wanting to be able to participate and be active and be part of their community and just socialize as well as be physically active. And it's grown significantly since 1982 for sure. And now we cover over 10 programs.
You have 10 programs.
Yeah.
So the ones that I'm familiar with is the basketball league.
Yeah.
What are some of the other programs that you have?
Sure. So if you said wheelchair basketball, we have wheelchair rugby, we have goalball, swimming, track and field, cycling, pickleball, because everybody wanted that,
Yeah.
so volleyball, power soccer, so just name a few.
You said goalball?
Goalball, yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
So goalball is actually a sport that was created after World War II for blinded vets from a recreational standpoint. Now it's a Paralympic sport as well. So it's played blindfolded, so it caters to folks with visual impairments or blindness, and played on a 9 by 18 meter court. Goals go the whole length of the back line, 9 meters on either end, 3 on 3. Our lines have thin string underneath, so we can field with our hands or our feet. The ball is about a 3-pound medicine ball, going around 35 miles an hour.
Wow. And what size is the court?
It's 18 meters long, so same as a volleyball court. 18 by 9 meters or 60 by 30 feet, roughly.
That's impressive.
So less than a second reaction time. You dive like a soccer goal and use your body to defend it.
And so you have one person who's shooting and one person who's sort of goaling?
It's 3 on 3, so you can pass, do all that stuff. Your shot has to be off and on the floor before what we call the 6 meter line. So it's kind of the equivalent of where the spike line would be for volleyball. It's got to be on there. It doesn't really dribble like a basketball at all because there's no air pressure like that. And so it forces you to lay out and extend your body and be as tall and as long as you can be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I never even knew that was a sport that existed. That is so cool.
It's fun.
And so, and talk about a low barrier to entry too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, like, when you have like these tournaments and things like that, how many people show up?
It just depends. Like I said, our tournaments, teams are coming from around the region or the states, depending on the sport. So there you'll have anywhere between 150, 200 plus athletes. There anywhere between 15 and 30 teams, depending on the sport. But our programs, we support all 7 of those have teams elements that I've named. So rugby, basketball, goalball, swimming, track and field, power soccer, they all are teams that travel, swimming. We field a team. So that can, again, range from, 8 or 9 folks all the way up to a group of 15 or 20. So that are traveling. That doesn't count just our regular programming.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how do you choose venues? Because I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, it could be a barrier to find a venue that is actually accessible.
It is.
Or is it not so much around the Portland area?
We're fortunate in the Portland area that we have some really great facility partners. Here, everything from Parks and Rec to the Middleman Jewish Community Center, all the way to the Hoop out in Beaverton. And we've been able to make those connections in the community and get spaces either for a lower cost or for nothing, which is even better because we are a small nonprofit as far as being able to do a lot with a little. So we try to do that, and our big thing is really inclusion and being part of the community. So we always hope to be good community partners and not just take, but actually give back and make sure that if we're hosting something at any of these park and recs, that the community knows it's there and anybody can come and play. We have the equipment, we have blindfolds, just come and play with us.
And I really like the fact that you're talking about inclusivity because that's one of the things that I talk about on this podcast ad nauseum is the importance of inclusivity and the importance of a community.
For sure.
And I love the idea that the community gets behind you all as well. Yeah. But I also want to acknowledge some of the things that you have to face, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to recount a story that I had, right? So I had a friend that was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I would remember going to places with her, and people would talk to me as if she wasn't there. Like, she's the one making the decisions. She just hurt her ankle.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only reason she was in a wheelchair is because she had a bum ankle.
Yeah.
But people treated her with such disrespect and so differently because she was just in a wheelchair that that was my first experience with ableism overtly. And why is it important for people to recognize that people with disabilities are people too? And that we need to talk to people just as if they're people, because they are.
I mean, it's highly important, right? Because we all, as a community, have a lot to give, a lot to learn, and just be part of your community, right? I think that's the engagement piece of it, and I think that's what's kind of neat about, I think, our organization and sports in general, is I think sports brings folks together. And it is an entry point of maybe some folks too are, I think a lot of that, the ableism stuff comes from fear and the unknown.
Yeah.
And so I think when you can just break down those barriers sometimes with sports, right? And watching somebody just play basketball, but they just do it in a different way. To just play volleyball, but maybe a little bit differently. And we invite you in and you see that and you're talking, they become then, like you said, they're people, they're your teammates, they're your community members. And we go from there. But I think that starts conversation, especially when we go into like the schools and you start that education at a young age as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's pivotal for that piece of it, for the inclusion piece, because we are part of society. We have jobs, we have families, we generate economy. We all have car insurance, we have house payments, we have rent to pay, whatever that might be. We're just like everyone else. And so I think it's always important for folks to see everybody in that light. And I think sports is just one of those ways to break down those barriers.
And for anybody listening, if you haven't gone to a game, you need to go. Yeah. It's so much fun. And the reason I love it more than your traditional, like, I love the Blazers, right?
Yep.
But I would much rather go to a sporting event like this because both sides are happy. Both sides are, there's competitive, right? But it's also more of like a team sport where the opposing team is not yelling and screaming profanities at the other opposing team. It's more of a family inclusive dynamic. So when you have these tournaments, like you have a big one coming up.
We do.
Right? Yeah. Where's that going to be?
It's at the Hoop in Beaverton.
Okay. And then is the Hoop in Beaverton like a series of, like a collection of basketball courts?
It is. It's technically a YMCA, but yeah, it's predominantly, I think there's 6 courts in there, and we use 4 of them.
Okay. So. And then what's the scoring? Is it just timed games, or is it?
It doesn't have. I mean, honestly, wheelchair basketball is no different than able-bodied basketball. With kind of really 2 exceptions. Is remember the ball or the chair is part of the person. As far as when you're talking about fouling and different things, and the 2 touch rule. So you got to touch your wheels twice, but then after that you got to do these dribble, pass, or shoot, and then you can touch again twice. But everything else is the same. 3 seconds in the lane, 10 seconds to get across. Shot clocks, all that stuff really remains the same. And depending on the division you're in too, if you're prep and then your little kids versus the varsity versus the adults or the women, your halves are different time wise.
So then in terms of some of the other sports that you were talking about, like with swimming in particular, like do you sort of have like go to like community pools and things like that? Is it like a regular swim meet, right? Yeah.
So we have swim practice, and then we go to different meets throughout the season. And so we have our practice facility that we rent out pool space to go ahead and the team does that, and then we try to get into at least 2 meets, if not 3. And some of our swimmers as well that are even more competitive swim with our program, but then they also swim in another swim program as well, or they might swim for their high school, or if their high school has a swim program.
I like that. So, and what's the best place to get started?
Really is checking out our website, adaptivesportsnw.org. If you just come, we have our list of things, our practices and programming everybody's welcome to come check it out. Especially if you're not ready to dip into the pool yet or get in that sports chair, you can come check it out, see it. and maybe, find some other things that you want to do. You might think swimming's your thing, but then there's 9 other programs that we offer, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is part of it. I think that's the entry point. I think what makes us unique too as an entry point is we have sports chairs and we have adaptive bikes and we have those things for folks to try. Because as you know, it's a different investment for standing basketball to go. Maybe I have a pair of shoes and that's it. But a sports chair is going to run $3,000 to $6,000, right? So that's not something that folks are going to be like, let me go try. So we have those items so folks can try that, see kind of what sport they want, what activity they want, and then we help them kind of look at getting grants for themselves through different various organizations, and then they can get their personalized sports chair or bike or whatever it is that they're looking for.
That's awesome. So you have like opportunities for grants because I would imagine a chair like that's not going to be covered by insurance.
No, usually sports chairs are not. A lot of the VAs though will cover an adaptive sports equipment. So a lot of our veterans, we help them, kind of zone in and get sizing and doing those kind of things, make sure that it's the bike they want, what they need. So we help with that part of it. So the VA will sometimes buy the adaptive equipment.
As somebody who's a veteran, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea the VA did that.
Yes.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the thing that you did before you got here at the executive director, is you created a program for folks.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you got involved with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in adaptive rec for quite some time. I started sports education camps for kids around the country back in 2000 through a grant through Western Michigan University, and then went back to Colorado, where what I call home. I was a military brat, but I called Colorado home and worked there for 3 or 4 years before I went down to the Lakeshore Foundation down in Birmingham, kind of start their ambulatory programs down there, including blind and vision impaired. And then actually wound up here at Portland State University here in Portland, starting their inclusive rec program at the university back in 2010.
So when you got there in 2010, there wasn't an inclusive rec part, right?
Yeah.
So what was the biggest surprise when you created an inclusive rec?
In some ways, though, I came into the right environment, right? Because the university and campus rec as a whole, that's what they were committed to. So they had just built this brand new rec center a year before, and actually had used Adaptive Sports Northwest when it was known as Oregon Disability Sports, and they had athletes in there and trying to get feedback before the building was built. So some of the features of the building were accessible for sure. But I think it was going back into the programming and going into the weight room and going what makes sense piece of equipment wise. And, it's great you have a lift, but we need to actually put the lift at the pool. Somebody shouldn't have to wait, So it was a little things to do. And I always talk about cheap and easy too, right? Like being able to put some tactile markers on your cardio equipment. There's really easy ways to make them spaces inclusive, even if they're already built. But it really was trying to change the culture.
Yeah.
Right? That was the bigger thing with staff training. And I always said, like, ultimately, it would be great if our organizations didn't have to exist, right? Because everything was inclusive. Like if you could work yourself out of a job, that's awesome.
I so relate to that.
So.
And I really respect that, right? Because one of the things that I have found over the years is if you make certain changes to improve accessibility for a group of people, 99.9% of the time, it's going to benefit everybody.
Right.
And so reframing the conversation from we need to do this for we need to do this for the good of humanity, because I believe you're right. It would be perfect if we didn't need groups to fight against ableism.
Yeah.
I wish that wasn't the case.
Okay, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so when you started that rec program and inclusivity, and you talked a little bit about putting the things, you used a term, putting something on the equipment. Yeah. What did you say?
Yeah, I just feel like even tactile indicators.
What is a tactile indicator?
The cheap version, Scotch tape works great.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Like for an elliptical machine, you can go in there before, and we have a Braille overlay now that we can put on machines, but cheap and easy for someone that's like, I'm not sure where to start, or it's too expensive, or I got to get a Braille display, I got to know somebody that knows Braille to check it, is you can cut out a Scotch tape that has an up arrow and a down arrow, that's tactile, and a square for quick start, and at least that's 90% accessible now. I might not be able to put my own program in, but I can jump on that elliptical now and hit start and up and down and be ready to go. So I can at least do that independently, right? Or same thing with weights and things like that, making sure there's tactile indicators for vision impaired and blind, or contrast, making sure the equipment is spaced out enough for a chair to go through.
Yeah.
Making sure you do some policies and procedures of making sure bags and all those things aren't on the floor, making sure people put those away. Just doing little things like that policy wise, or even our cable columns. I trained our fitness center staff that, the adjustable arms and stuff like that, go ahead and make them to go down. So the starting point was at chair height, right? And if they saw it up high because somebody got done doing a lat pull down or something like that, that just go by and just lower it. So then somebody doesn't have to come and ask you to lower it for them. So trying to make that the norm and the starting point for folks. So just changing the way you think a little bit about your space and what you're doing.
And I appreciate that because I would imagine from the person in the chair's perspective, just that they don't have to ask and acknowledge they
All
need.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes such a huge difference.
Yep.
Because I remember so one of the interesting things that happens with autism is once you diagnose you're autistic, more often than not, people just treat you differently.
Yeah.
Unless they're autistic, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And I see that too with other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I talk to don't understand that just small incremental change makes so much difference.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about that tactile piece with the arrows and the squares. I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
Because, at the state, we have facilities all over the place. And I don't think anything like that is a part of the equation.
Yeah. I mean, even your break room, right? To be able to throw a button on the 5, for the microwave or a start thing. Like those are pretty simple things to do that if you don't have Braille and you don't have that kind of thing, great. But you can do a lot with Scotch tape and toothpicks.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And then, so how did you go? So you started the inclusivity program at the rec, and then you came here.
Yes.
What's been some of the things that you've encountered as the executive director here that you wish people would know?
I don't know. I've been involved with the organization since I got here.
Yeah.
In 2010, right? I was an athlete, a coach, volunteer. I was on their board. And so I think the big thing, I think coming from PSU over to ASNW fully, I don't know. I think not a lot has changed. I think the mission and vision is the same, right? It's build a community and doing that. I think though it's even more prevalent now after COVID. That build a community piece because we were isolated for so long, and a lot of times within our population with disabilities, even maybe more so. That I think those specs. So I think more important than ever is the sports and the social piece. It's the physical benefits, but it's the social and emotional benefits I think that are even more magnified than they ever were before. Coming out of that. So I think that's kind of where we've been focused on is making sure we get not numbers up for numbers' sake, but to get that we know that we're doing good when we see that community. When we can look at our last cycling, day of the year in September and see 80 people there, and not only just 80 people there, but to have organ spinal cord injury there, to have World Organ there, these different other community partners that we partner with there was just a fun night, and to see that part and the smiles and just everybody being in community is what makes what we do worth it, right? Like that's why we're here. It's not just about the points on the board. It's seeing an athlete that maybe is newly injured that is not even just competing for the first time, but maybe is traveling for the first time. So it might be a basketball tournament, but the cool part is they're like, this is the first time I've been on the plane since my injury.
Yeah.
Or it's my first time on a road trip or whatever that is, and that's the cooler part of what we do.
And I would imagine it would be similar. So I have this experience of whenever I talk to people, I always say, if you're on the autism spectrum, the first place I recommend people to go is where other people on the spectrum are.
Yeah.
Because that way you don't feel alone in the world. Yeah. Because the tendency if you have a disability, is to self-isolate, to sort of keep yourself, sort of enclosed. And so having a space like this where people can go and be around other people with similar injuries, similar life experiences, and having that conversation and go, oh, I thought I was the only one going through this. But then take it on the extra piece, having that people appreciate and be a part of something that makes just community, but also just regular people.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's what I think I highlighted with the swimming, right? Like we have swimmers that compete on both teams because they want that, right? They're like, I want to swim with other swimmers with disabilities. And I want to go compete against other swimmers with disabilities because my high school, I get to compete and that's great. And I can be competitive, but it's always against able-bodied folks. And so it's not always a level playing field.
Yeah.
And as competitive as they are, and they love the training, they love their coaches, and they love their team over there too. But sometimes, like you said, they just want to be in a space where they're with other folks with disabilities as well.
Because it makes a difference.
Yep.
There are certain conversations that you can have when you're around other people with disabilities than you can't in other spaces.
And it goes back to mentoring, right? Because it's not just about the sports. Those kids can sit there and talk about high school and prom and debate club and all the other different things that they want to talk about too, because they have somebody else that, okay, I'm going to prom in a wheelchair. That might be different. Or I'm visually impaired and I'm going to homecoming, or how did you navigate this or that? It's I think that's the fun part to watch, and it's also the adult to kid mentoring as well. With our She Flies program and watching our ladies just really embrace some of the younger athletes coming in and doing those things. So I think it's huge when, or if you're newly injured or you acquired your disability or your diagnosis, it's like you said, to have other folks around to not be the only one.
Now you said the She Flies program.
Yeah.
What's that about?
So we got a grant from She Flies, which is part of Sport Oregon, and it was specifically an initiative to start more women in our programs. And our wheelchair basketball took off. So
that's awesome.
We we had more women all kind of across the board in our programs, but our women's basketball took off, and it's been impressive just to watch how many ladies are now engaged in that sport.
And you said there's a mentorship program part of that too?
And it's just is it built in naturally, because that was She Flies, so it was girls and women. So we've had some of the young ladies there too that come to the practices and do that, and just it's just great to watch that piece of it.
What would you say is one of your biggest needs right now?
I think what it is for all nonprofits, and I hate to go there, but it's funding.
Yeah.
Right? It's always funding. Because in order for us to operate, we are having to buy facilities, and the travel costs for these teams to be able to, or these individuals to go, quote, compete, but really just have those life experiences is costly, right? For hotels, for travel, for airfare, or even if it's a road trip, right? Rental cars and taking things, updating equipment, all that stuff just takes money, and we're trying to do 10 programs. And we're stretched pretty thin. There's only 2 full-time folks, and then if you combine everybody else, I have almost another full-time position. So we're very much needing that, and then volunteers. Always needing volunteers to help. That's help coaching. That's help with tournaments and in-game management, all the way to if anybody wants to redo our storage unit, we would love it, right? Getting some shelving and organizing it would be fantastic, So we're always looking for folks' time and talent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, hold on one second here. And we're back. Sorry, I had to fix a little audio issue.
It's all good.
So I know you're talking about funding, right? And one of the things that people don't understand is how important not communities, but organizations like yours are, because the Walmarts of the world don't need money, right? It's the organizations that are doing things for the most people that need that sort of financial support. Yep. And if you can't support financially, volunteering is always recommended.
Yes.
And you were talking about how you have a lot of volunteers.
Yes.
But you always need more.
Yes.
What kind of things would you need help with so that if people are interested, they go, oh, yeah, I could do that?
I mean, honestly, everything, any time and talent, right? Rather that's if you have a marketing background or you have construction background. Like I said, we are always looking to try to get storage into our storage units and getting shelving in there and just organizing it, everything to administrative. If that's something that you're willing to come in and do some office stuff. So we're always looking for anybody that has talents kind of across the board. Maintenance. So if you're, mechanically inclined and like working on bike-like things, we have the bikes themselves, but we also have our sports chairs that always need that. Yeah, just kind of maintenance that way as well.
And then in terms of like at the actual events,
Yes.
also probably imagine you need some volunteer help too.
Yeah, all the time. Rather that's like I said, scorekeeping. You don't necessarily have to know anything about the sport. We have some tutorials there for you at the table. I could put you on, different things, or if it's serving lunch, right? Like we always need volunteers to do different things, or pick up an official from the airport. Anything like that, or just helping us set up and putting signs together, just moving equipment, unloading materials. There's all different things that can happen in an event. Our big basketball tournaments, starts tomorrow, the 9th and 10th, but, we have a big goal ball tournament in February, that we're always looking for folks. And I would say, like I said, just encourage folks to check out our website. You can volunteer through there, sign up for volunteering through there, and see what might stick. So.
And is all of your stuff sort of contained within the Portland metro area, or do you venture out sometimes, like Salem and places like that?
Oh, yeah, we'll venture out for sure, but the primary bulk of our things are in the Portland, Vancouver area for sure. And we have folks that travel from different places, but we've done some programming down in Eugene or Salem or different things. If there's a need or want or desire, we sometimes do kind of like triad events or one-off things. And we've also just been partners with folks that, hey, I want to start this program. So then how do we work with them to help, secure, whether that's equipment, or that's just advice on how to set that up and be almost a microsite. But our main bulk of things are absolutely in the Portland, Vancouver area.
And then in terms of like equipment and things like that, like would you just take donations of like basketballs or things like that if you need, or do you have that part covered?
The smaller equipment, for the most part, we're in pretty decent shape. Doesn't mean that it won't come to time that we don't need that. Right now, we're in good shape for a lot of those, just the everyday, practice balls and things like that. We're in good shape for. We're always looking for, like I said, I think some of it's the littler stuff, right? Like cleaning supplies, greasing tools, things like that for us to work on equipment. I mean, it sounds silly, but bike pumps, electrical pump, like those kind of things. Yeah, if people are like, I don't need my electric pump anymore, we take that stuff in a heartbeat. So.
And then in terms of like adaptive equipment, right? Have we progressed a lot in terms of what's available to help people with disabilities? Or are we sort of still kind of stuck? Like I know with technology, there are some things that are better, but I'm just curious if like in terms of like enhanced design of wheelchairs, enhanced design of like equipment, are we progressing, do you think?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, they're always trying to make a faster, better, equipment all the time. Rather that's like I said, the sports chair, and everybody's different, and there's competing companies out there, right, trying to get the business for what their sports chair is and different things. And so I think it's kind of like picking your college, right? Folks have different things that they prefer, or they're wanting, and but I think absolutely it's always progressing. Same with the cycling world, right? There's always new engineering or new ways to be comfortable. And I think engineers as a whole, it's their imagination. So they'll take it as far as they can because they want to be faster or, I think the big thing now, especially with adaptive equipment, is the e-bike and getting e-assist on those. I think that's on the cycling side, you've seen that has increased a lot. And I think we're a little behind, but you're starting to see now the adaptive bikes with the assist on them are being able to either retrofit them or having that as an option now. So
and when you're talking about bicycles that are sort of designed, they're not your typical bicycle, right? They look different.
Yeah, so we have everything from hand cycles to tandem bikes to trikes to the Burkle, which is arm and leg powered. So yeah, we have a vast range of different adaptive cycles.
You said the Burkle?
Yeah,
That's
Burkle's kind of
interesting.
fun. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's probably one of our most popular ones. So
Is a combination of arm and leg?
arm and leg. So then again, if you have maybe like a stroke or something,
Yeah.
or something where it's imbalanced, it works great because you can use any of those appendages. So you could use just your arms, you could use just your legs, or you can use your right side or your left side. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. That is true.
And with the electric assist, that would mean that people could actually stay out longer and actually.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, or you'd be out and also it's a harder road than your arms can handle on a hand cycle, so you can get a little boosty boost and get up that hill. Yep.
Because I had an e-assist bike because I have a spinal injury from the military.
Yep.
And one of the game changers was that e-assist bike because
absolutely
I only have so much energy.
Yes. Yep.
And flipping that switch allowed me to go on multiple mile bike rides as opposed to 4 blocks and I was done.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And then in terms of like the local community support, what has been the community support like, and how much of a difference has that made for the organization?
I mean, some of our community partners are great. I mean, for sure, everything from the Trailblazer Foundation to Shriners to different community partners that we have, and then commercially, like Toyota Sachi was huge. For the Pacific Northwest dealers to step up and market with us and partner with us, and giving us the Tundra and all those things. It's been invaluable, and it's been a game changer for our organization the last 2 years. And our work with Adidas and their innovation team and making the kits for the ladies for wheelchair basketball, and hopefully that's going to progress in their world for sure. It's been invaluable, not just from a funding standpoint and making us be able to support our athletes more, but also from the community and watching Toyota and Adidas and everybody just really embrace our community, and our athletes feeling valued. To be able to walk into the Adidas campus and have all the towels there and the snacks and the drinks and this and that, when the women, when our Pacific Northwest Reign went in there to have that, and they're like, well, why would we not?
Right.
We would but that's not always our experience, right? Yeah. Even with some good partners, but not that, like, to have that level. And we just got done doing the Adidas Global Innovation, or inclusive, the Global Week of Inclusion with Adidas a couple weeks ago, and then we just did one this last couple of days with them because the department couldn't be there, so that they value that piece of it, right? Like they value it, their employees embrace it, they believe in it. So it was so the to Comcast is a huge sponsor of ours as well. So yeah, the community is huge, and we're thankful for it, and obviously we want to just build that community even more and make sure, like, businesses know that why would you not partner with us, right? Like I said, we're people. We own houses, we own cars, we buy groceries, we do all those things. We need insurance, and things. So I think just, again, building that community. So.
And you said it was a global day
of inclusion.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was Global Week of Inclusion. Adidas is it was throughout the whole Adidas thing. So they we went for the one day, and they tried our sports, which is something we asked them to do. But there was just a day of giving too. So they helped work on our bikes and do a mechanical day with our thing. Our athletes were there. They heard our stories, our mission. They're recruiting for volunteering. They're doing some funding resources. So they really have back, they're from a grassroots level. I mean, we had over 150 employees there, I think, that day that we touched. And then, the 20 that were out of state, we hooked up with this last Wednesday. So
that's so awesome.
So yeah, it was awesome. For sure.
And they came in and they fixed bikes and did.
Yeah, fixed bikes, tried different sports. We had pickleball out there, sit volleyball, goal ball, basketball.
Awesome.
Yeah, and they got in our chairs, and yeah, it was a good time. So.
And I would imagine it's probably the first time that a few of them have actually participated in something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what was kind of cool. And they asked great questions, and they were passionate about it. And, I think we're going to see some of those folks as volunteers, as funders, as cheerleaders,
Yeah.
And the bigger thing too is, there was a lot of conversation too. It's like, oh, I know somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, I know this, or and stuff like this. So so even that piece of it's huge, because the more awareness we bring that we're out there, then the more folks that we can serve and be part of our community. So.
And then in terms of like the other groups that support you,
Yeah.
Are there any areas that you could use possibly some more support that you don't already have?
Yeah. Like I said, I think we're very thankful for our facility partners that we have, but we always can use more facilities at a discounted rate. And then I think that the travel piece is big. And like, would I love to land like Alaska Air or something like that, to be able to, when we're having to do the flights and stuff like that, or Southwest, that would be great.
Yeah.
But also technology.
Yeah.
Technology is huge. Like I'd love for an Intel to step up and be able to help us with that piece of it. But even, everything from our banking to our insurance, like any of those folks that want to be partners with us, and we would love it for sure. So.
And there's not much, how would I phrase this? There aren't that many organizations where you can see the difference in your contributions right off the bat.
Yeah.
Your organization is definitely one of those exceptions, where you come to the organization, you come to one of your events, you can see the difference that your organization is making. You can see how people's lives are being impacted in a positive way.
Yep.
Which is why I always say, like, local organizations, community-based organizations that are local in your community need the help the most.
Yep.
So where would you like to see this organization in a few years from now?
I always say quality over quantity.
Yeah.
I the next few years, I don't want to just add sports to add sports. But I honestly, I would love to, for our small staff, to be able to grow our staff base as well.
Yeah.
So we can offer more programming time and spend more time with some of our existing sports, right? Like archery, we're only run once a month right now, and sit volleyball. We have a partnership with Columbia Empire Volleyball Association, which has been awesome because they provide coaching and they're there. So we're trying to, and they're there, once a month starting in January for sure, hopefully twice a month. But if we can get even more of our own staff to be able to program some of that time, would be amazing. And yeah, because I go back to your other question too about other things we need. Food is always a thing too for our events. Like the more stuff we can get donated food wise, that keeps the cost down. And that means more things we can help with our athletes and funding, on trips and things like that, to be able to cover, because we cover our, coaches are volunteers, so we cover all their travel expenses.
Mm-hmm.
But our athletes, we try to cover as much as we can, but that's not always possible. Because it's a lot of money to send, 10, 15 folks, to a competition, and traveling is never really right here. That's part of the reason we host our own tournaments, right? Is it's a tournament that our athletes get to do, because we might not be able to afford to go elsewhere. Because it's not like a basketball league or t-ball or baseball or something like that, where you can pick your day of the week that you want to play. There's three different options that you have. There's not that here. So if you want to go play in a goal ball tournament, or you want to go play in another wheelchair basketball tournament, it means you're going to have to travel. So power soccer, all those. So.
And a lot of people don't understand that when you're talking about travel, it's more complicated if you have a wheelchair.
Yeah, because you usually have two then, because you're going to have your sports one, your everyday one, and
And the likelihood, because I keep seeing this all the time, the likelihood that the airport is not going to mess up your chair in transport is unfortunately low. I've seen too many videos of where that happens. And actually, that kind of brings up something I do want to sort of acknowledge and sort of speak voice to, is is how you treat people. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people in general.
Yep.
What advice do you have to folks who may not have any experience with people with disabilities? What are some things that you think people should keep in mind? Like, I have tons on my mind, but I just was curious, like, what you would advise people.
Don't make it so complicated.
Yeah.
Just talk to people. They're just people. They might be sitting down. They might not be able to see you. They might be shorter than what you are. They, whatever they might be missing a limb, but they're just people. So just communicate. I guess is my advice, right? Like, I think sometimes we make things very complicated out of fear, versus just talk to people. And it's okay to ask, but then be okay with the answer.
Yes.
Right. I think that's the part where sometimes folks struggle is if you see me, I'm totally blind. I use a guide dog most of the time. If you see me on the street corner and you're like, oh, do you need some help? It might be a loud construction area, and I might actually go, absolutely, yes. Actually, can you? Because that jackhammer over there is making it really hard for me to judge traffic. That's great. But if it's, and I go, no, I'm good, then be okay with I'm good. And not get the savior complex of, well, must not be okay because I can see and you can't, and things. So I think that's the big thing is, I think that's what people, I think, are also worried about asking. And it's okay to ask a person, do they need something? Because I would do that if I was in a store and saw anybody that was, so it's okay, but then be okay with the answer. I think that's where the second part is where people struggle, is that piece of it. So I guess that's my best advice is you can ask. And I think, but not asking about why are you in that chair?
Yeah.
Why did you lose your sight? Why? Like, would you go to somebody and go, why do you have blonde hair?
Right.
Why are you so tall? Why? Like, we just don't do that. So why is it okay to think you can just go and invade that personal thing? You don't have that relationship with that person. You're a stranger, but it's okay to say, oh, do you need any help? That's fine, but they accept the answer. And I think for parents, this is my big pet peeve is, kids are going to be curious, and you see me with a guide dog, or you maybe see somebody using a chair for the first time. They are curious, and kids, they don't have all the ways to ask, and I think it's all pure. So it's okay for them to come in and ask questions, and not make your kid afraid. Yeah. I see it way too often where it's like, oh my gosh, don't, or apologizing and be like, I'm sorry. They came into, I'm like, it's okay, but taking your kid up and like trying to run away from them before they talk to somebody with a disability, we're then promoting this whole, that's a scary thing, we shouldn't talk to people.
Yeah.
And things. So that's my biggest thing, especially as a parent, but I see it all the time is somebody scooping their kid up because, like, heaven forbid, little Johnny and Susie or somebody should walk up to you. My dog is cute. They're 4. They're going to come and ask about my dog. It's okay, and things. And you can teach that as a teaching moment to be like, oh, the dog's working or whatever thing, but not, oh, you don't touch that dog and scoop it away and with no explanation, or because it's almost a fear-based thing versus why don't you teach the kid like, hey, you need to ask before you pet any dog. So ask the owner, right? So that's teaching your kid to talk to the person with a disability, and things. So I think that's my biggest advice is just communicate and talk. Yeah.
And I used to have a service dog.
Yeah.
He passed a couple months back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Me too. He was 15 though.
Yeah.
So he had a really good life.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up, because you talked about you having a dog yourself. Yep. One of the things that people don't understand when you have a support dog or a service dog, there's a difference between an emotional support dog and a service dog.
Yes. Yes.
And please, I beg people, do not give people with service dogs a hard time.
Yep.
Like, I've seen it more than once. It's like, no, they... And don't pet the dog without permission. Yep. Please.
Because it goes back to the same thing, I think, right? Like, you shouldn't be petting any dog you don't know without permission, right? Like, that's the thing. It's kind of like the whole talking to somebody that's in a chair and they talk to you instead of them. It's the same thing. I think it's a whole fear thing of,
Yeah.
okay, it's a dog. So it must be safe for me to pet it because it's trained as this or that. I'm like, but why would you do that? Like, you would not just go up? Well, maybe you would, but hopefully you're not just going up to a complete, stranger dog. I mean, I have a German Shepherd and stuff like that. Like, yeah, he's probably friendly, but why would you even do that with any dog? So.
Because like even with the best trained dog,
Yep.
you stick your mouth in the hand,
Yeah.
mouth in the hand.
Yeah.
You stick your hand in its mouth.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what people don't see, that part of it. And they don't see the part of that dog's doing their job and my life's in their hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And things. So what they think is a harmless, oh, I'm just petting him. It's fine. It's actually not fine, because if I'm crossing a street and he's like, oh, there's my buddy, that pet, like, his focus is now on you and not me, and what he's supposed to be doing. So I think that's where people really kind of struggle with that, or the ones that have their pet dogs that are like, it's fine, he just wants to say hi. I'm like, yeah, well, mine's working, so hi is not an option right now.
Yeah.
And you're endangering me and my dog by doing that. So I think that's
a
the other
legit serious danger.
Oh yeah, I've had my dog before my current dog right now had to retire early because of it, because he was attacked so many times. And yeah, so he started being the one that wanted to be aggressive if he saw a dog coming towards him. So I couldn't have that. But he had no issues with dogs ever before, but he got attacked so many times on public transit and different places of people bringing their not service dogs into areas that they shouldn't have been in. So
yeah, that drives me up a wall too.
Yep.
When you have people and you know that is not a service dog.
Correct. Or the 3 dogs that they have in their basket.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If somebody has 3 dogs in the basket, it's a really good indicator that at least 2 of them aren't their service dogs.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or the stroller. It's my favorite. Yeah.
Well, I had a stroller.
Yeah.
But that's because he was 16 and couldn't walk anymore.
Exactly. I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he could still do his job, because he would alert to my anxiety attacks.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he would tell me when I was about to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
And so he needed that sort of direct eye contact.
Yep.
But like you were saying, like, because he was also kind of small.
Yeah.
Like, I had to be very vigilant about other dogs, way more than other people.
Yep.
Because people you can kind of predict, but if you have somebody that has an untrained dog, it's bad news.
Well, and especially like because I can't see it.
Yeah.
So I have no way of predicting the human or the dog's behavior until they're already on us. Yep.
And then you have to deal with all of the extra stuff and try to keep you and your dog safe at the same time. Oh, man.
Yeah. My favorite is the 10-foot flexi leash. That's my favorite. It gets like wound up and around and so like, hey. Yeah.
It quickly turns into something dangerous.
Correct. Absolutely. Because it goes back to the same thing again. I don't care if it's not a service dog or what, like just control your animal. Like that's my thing. Because if you're in control of your animal, then even if it's not a service dog, it should be able to be handled, I guess, and things is my thing. I shouldn't have to deal that in stores and different things, but
not even. But no, you shouldn't.
I shouldn't have to. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I'm mistaken and that was a service animal, then you still are obligated to have it under control.
100%.
Which is why I had to retire mine, because it was no longer like it was not okay for him to growl and do that stuff. So I needed to retire him.
And how much time between when you had to retire him and you got your new one?
I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
So I was able to, because I needed to rehome him because he would not have been okay with me bringing another guide dog into the home.
Yeah.
Because he really wanted to still work. So he got reserviced. So he actually went down to Central Point Police Department and was a victim advocacy dog.
Oh, nice.
So, and he did great because he wasn't in a harness. He wasn't whatever, but he was great around other dogs and people. And he did an awesome job for them. So I was fortunate enough, like I literally handed him over and went straight out to the school to get another one. But
there was still a gap, right? So like when you,
there was a gap where I really wasn't using him.
Okay.
I still had him at home and stuff, but I wasn't, because I was too fearful to go out in public with him.
And the
So,
reason I wanted to bring that up
yeah.
is because I want people to understand the
Yeah.
ramifications of their actions.
Absolutely.
Because you're not just in that moment talking about something that happens.
Correct.
You're talking about an impact on a person's ability to thrive in this
Correct.
society.
Yeah, I no longer had the same level of independence that I had before. I'm not as confident with my cane. I can do it. I'm slower.
Yeah.
And all those different things. So I think, yeah, I lost my sense of independence for a long time because I couldn't be in certain places with my dog. I couldn't just walk down to the food court, and things like that, because it was always a fear of, it was too much stress on me and the dog of the anticipation of what's going to happen next. I didn't want to get on a train with them. Didn't want to get on a bus with them because there were so many not service dogs in those places. And so, yeah, it limited what I did and where I went because I didn't have my mobility aid. Yeah.
And what bursts my bubble about that whole thing is that if you really want to have your dog off leash, they have a million dog parks.
Yep.
Where you can take your dog and have it off leash and do all of that stuff.
Yep.
And then when you're done with that, just leash your dog and be considerate of people.
Yep.
It doesn't, and that's the part that kills me, is because it takes so much less effort to just be kind and to do the right thing.
Yep.
I don't understand why people make that conscious choice, because it's a conscious choice.
Like I said, or that whole thing of, even if they are leashed and going, well, he just wants to say hello. I'm like, but not now. Like, this is not an okay time to say hello because he's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. But it just still blows their mind. Or you get you're so mean.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, trust me, my dog has a great life. He's with me most of the time. Your dogs often have to be at home. Or they're whatever. I'm like, he loves to work. I was like, really? No, he loves what he does. He gets to be with me. So.
And it's not you being mean. It's
correct.
It's you saying, hey, I need to
be safe.
Make sure that I'm safe and my dog's safe.
Exactly.
But the other person interprets it
as mean. Exactly. Correct. I'm like, trust me, he has a great life, loves his job, loves life, and gets plenty of time to socialize and play.
Right.
At the appropriate times. So, yeah, he's not lacking for that.
And so how many years do you typically get with a service dog?
It depends. Like I said, the guide dogs, typically they're around 2 when you're matched with them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they can be a little bit older. My last 2 have been turned 3 in class, and because they just didn't have a match, right? It's like eHarmony and stuff. So I worked my first dog 8 years.
Okay.
My first dog 9 years. My second dog 8 years. My third dog, unfortunately, ended up with cancer pretty quickly, so I only had him for 5. And then my other one, I worked for under 5, the one with the dog issues. And then my current guy has been with me. He was the COVID dog. We were the last school. We got closed down early in March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So we were the last group. They sent us home early and all that stuff and closed the school down for however many months.
So the school's back up and running now?
Oh, yeah.
And you said it's kind of like eHarmony. What's the process for that?
For matching?
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people understand that at all.
Yeah, so for guide dogs, it's interesting, right? There's different guide dog schools, and it's like picking your college. I've gotten all my dogs from Seeing Eye on Morristown, New Jersey. So I'm on my 5th dog. But the process, I mean, they know your pace, your pull, how hard your corrections are, kind of what your environment is. I'm going to be on college campus. Are you going to be in the city? Are you a rural, the country? Is it, do you have kids? Do you have other dogs? Like all those factors come into play. So they take all that into consideration before I ever get called out to the school. They usually have at least 2 potential matches before you go out there, and then they'll still do some couple last minute checks there, and then the instructors all get together with, there might be 30, 40 dogs to choose from that are, trained and ready to go. And 16 of us in class or whatever it is, and probably actually even more than 40 dogs to pick from, but they have that whole selection, and it's like they sit down and who matches with who the best and the whys and all that kind of stuff. And and then we get matched, and I my first dog was 4 weeks of training.
Mhm.
Successor dogs right now for seeing eye, I believe we're at 19 days.
So that means you
21
fly
days.
in,
Fly in, and
and
I'm
you're
at the
there
school
with the
the
dog
dog
for
for almost 3
19
weeks.
days.
Yeah, 3
Okay.
weeks. Yep, yep. Yeah, fly in there on a Monday and leave on a Thursday. So most of the time, except for COVID, and then you're there for 2 weeks,
Okay.
and you're out. No, so yeah,
And
that was pretty surreal.
do you have a good idea of how well the dog's going to match to you within that? Like, does it take a few days, or do you sort of like right off the bat kind of have
Uh,
a calling towards
I
a
think
certain
both.
kind of dog?
I
Okay.
think both. I think they do such a great job of matching because they've taken all these factors into consideration. So I think, but they've done dog switches in the middle of class that hasn't worked out. They thought their first, gut instinct was or what would work. So that's definitely happened. I think I've been very fortunate. Um, except the one that we talked about that actually got retired early because of dog aggression.
Yeah.
They came and talked to me about possible dog switch. And the reason was every time he saw the white van coming, he would scream his little head off because he was so excited to work. And so they're like, he can't do that in public. I'm like, okay, but that's not his reality. His reality is I leave my house. He's got a mile and a half we're going to walk before we ever get on the train. So he's going to get to do exactly what he is screaming to do
Yeah.
before he's ever, where the vans were always a thing for them to go down to the city to start working. So he would get so excited, but he was obnoxious. But I was like, no. And they worked us at that diet and we worked different things. And I think 3 days after the initial thing or 4 days, different things, somebody was like, did they switch your dog, Jen? I'm like, nope, he's still him. But we just really worked because I was like, his work is impeccable. Like he does great. Like this is the only issue is this. We can work this through. And we were able to. They had faith in me as a handler. And we were able to make it happen. So.
And how do they signal? So, like, if you're walking down and you want to stop, how do they let you know?
Yeah, so they'll just stop.
And then you just feel their resistance, and then
Yeah,
stop.
everything's through the harness. So they'll guide me to push me to the right or pull me to the left. But they'll stop, and then I would say I make more mistakes in our relationship than he does.
I love that.
But they're gonna,
Okay.
because it's a teamwork, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not perfect, they're not robots, so they're gonna make mistakes too. But I probably make as many, if not more, than my dog does, right? Because they'll stop, and then you take one extra step for fun. You're like, oh. Especially if it's like a known route and you're like, well, I'm not there yet. But he actually stopped because, somebody left their skateboard in the middle. So that's why, or there's a caution tape. But yeah, they just stop. And then I can like inch my foot ahead to know if it's a curb, it's stairs up, stairs down, whatever that might be. And part of that's environmental too. Like he'll stop at the bottom of the stairs where I used to work all the time, but I knew it was the bottom of the stairs. So I'd give him the forward command, to continue or whatever. So yeah, they just stop. And then we figure out from there, we assess, whether it's a curb, it's it's an intersection, whatever those things are. And then we'll go from there.
And I've always been curious, like, do the sounds on the crosswalks actually help you?
They can, but my caution, and I was always trained to go with traffic.
Yeah.
Is I still listen to traffic, right? Because if you get locked into, well, the cuckoo says you could go, and you're not paying attention to your traffic, then you're not paying attention to that person that decides to run a light or inch out into the crosswalk too much or do those kind of things. So I think they can be helpful for sure. But I think it's always, you also still need to be aware. But I do the same thing with my kid because, again, that's something that not just folks with visual impairment use.
Yeah.
Kids use it all the time. Parents use it all the time. People use them all the time. But I always caution my kid too all the time. I'm like, that's great, but you gotta be watching traffic. You gotta be listening to traffic. You gotta be watching and trying to predict what that person's gonna do. I don't have the luxury of eye contact, but like you need to make eye contact with that car before you go in front of them.
Yeah.
You need to do this. Or if you see that their heads turn to the left and they're in the right-hand lane, don't cross because they're not looking at you. Like it's those little things that like teaching a kid, because my kid's sighted, that I don't have those advantage things. So I will wait a cycle to make sure that car's clear or things like that, that I appreciate the auditory crossings, especially for bigger intersections, but I don't totally rely on them.
And have Teslas caused a problem for you?
Electric cars, not so much. I mean, They're quiet. I think the only time I don't know they're there is if they're already there when I approach,
Okay.
because they're already off. But there's still traffic noises that you hear from the wheels on the pavement.
Okay.
So you're still going to hear that part of it. But if I approach an intersection, they've been there a while, then I don't necessarily know that they're there. And so that can be a little bit different. The cool thing is my dog does. So my dog could care less whether they can hear it or not. So they still will react accordingly. So.
And what about so if people are driving,
Yep.
right, and they see somebody on the street,
Yep.
and they start to cross,
Yep.
and it's obvious that something might. How would I phrase this? Would you prefer them to honk their horn or not honk their horn?
Not honk their horn.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured.
Because that's just startling, and honking the horn can be 20,000 different things.
Yeah.
Right? Because people honk their horns to say hi to people they know. They
Yeah.
honk their horns because somebody's protesting on the corner. They honk their horn, and we don't know any of that. So honking is not helpful.
What would be helpful? Obviously, just don't hit you.
Yeah, don't hit me would be good. And I actually had this happen, and I thought the gentleman handled it actually very well. It was a crossing I do all the time,
Mhm.
and I had the thing, but there was some construction going on that made traffic divert differently.
Okay.
And they would basically be going into the crosswalk because that's where they were instructed to kind of go, the way the flow was. But he actually, and he was fine because he was stopped, but he actually got out of the car and said, "Do you, just so you know, this is going on." And again, that's not a split second thing, but I guarantee you, if it's a split second thing, your honking is not going to help.
Yeah.
So unless you have the time to like roll down your window or get out and be like, "Hey, this is what's going on," because you've assessed something that potentially is going to be dangerous. Yeah, I could just say.
Would you want people to do that if they see that?
I mean, again, I think it goes back to asking. I think it's fine if you're like, "Hey," because they might not know that the dog's probably going to go around that piece of it.
Yeah.
But again, I would do that for anyone.
100%.
So I guess
Yeah.
that's my thing. If you would do it for anyone, then
Yeah.
I would do it.
Okay.
If that makes sense, right? Like
it does.
So if I was going to do that for anybody, then yeah, why would I not give me that same information, right? Like, oh, by the way, there's a construction in case you didn't know. Okay, cool. Do you need anything? No, my dog will go around it. Thank you though. Right? Like
Yeah.
I can totally handle that part of it. If you weren't going to do that for somebody, then I don't think you have to do it. If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So
I really appreciate it.
because it's the same thing. If I totally misjudged traffic and I went to go step into traffic,
Yeah.
I would think someone would go stop or grab me or something like that. But don't just grab me because it's your instinct to grab me because I'm always going to cross the street. And you're grabbing me because you just don't think I should cross by myself. You're actually grabbing me because there is an e-car bearing down that you didn't hear. Right? Like that's a different thing. But I think you would do that if you were crossing the street, Sean, right? I would hope if you were crossing the street and you did not see this car coming for whatever reason, that someone would grab you and be like, "Whoa, Sean, don't," Yeah. So that's my thing is if you were going to do whatever you would do to anybody else, then absolutely, then you should. I think your human instinct should be there, but it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be doing something because I'm blind or because I'm that. If that makes sense.
It totally does. I think it's like one of the things that I get a lot is you don't look autistic.
Yeah.
I never know how to respond to that. Like, how are we supposed to look?
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so, like, I always like am curious, like, what's the best approach?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like you say, they don't know, but then they don't get curious.
Yeah.
And instead of people getting curious and finding out and sort of trying to figure and be better people, when you not curious, you tend to go to judgment. And when you go to judgment, then things just go awry.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, we've been at this for about an hour.
Yeah.
So what's the website where people can go find more information?
Sure. It's Adaptive Sports with an S, NW for Northwest.org.
And remind people again, like what's the best way? Would you prefer people to shoot you in your organization an email? Would you prefer people to call and reach out? What's the easiest way for people to get in touch with you if they want to support or be a part of?
Yeah, if they want to support, you can find all of it on that website. That's why we kind of direct there. So if it's more into the funding type thing, there's donation buttons right on that page directly. If it's a corporate business and you're wanting to look some marketing, things like that, you can absolutely call or again, email. The email addresses are all on there. Mine is execdirector@adaptivesportsnw.org if you want to get a hold of me directly. If you're interested in some of our programs, we have programs at adaptivesportsnw.org. If you're into volunteering, there's a volunteer link there as well. Or if you just want to sign up for our newsletter to just kind of know what all is going on, there's a link all on that website for you to be able to do any of that. Or if you want to just come out and check any of our sports out, calendar of events are on there, practice times, all that. So we're also on Facebook and Instagram. So.
And last but definitely not least,
Yep.
If I can get this cover off, I wanted to present you with a kindness coin.
Oh. Like a challenge coin? Thank you.
Kind of.
Yeah. Thank you.
But instead of a challenge coin, it's basically a kindness coin that says, thank you for being kind.
Oh, thank you.
And please pay it forward.
I will.
Because what your organization is doing for people with disabilities is awesome.
Thank you.
And how far you have brought this organization and all of the cool things that you're doing, people need to know. And it is so moving and so inspiring to have a space for people with disabilities just to be and be included is awesome.
Thank you.
Jen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And like I said, I appreciate it and all that you do.
You got it.